mention this again towards the end of the webinar. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all. I'd like to thank you for being here on a Saturday morning. And I am just going to add something to the chat right now. So we've got a 10 KD link for the webinar certificate that Ms. Diane is going to present. And just a quick reminder that TESOL membership for a full year is 25 KD. And the two links are there, and I'll also be sharing them again towards the end of Ms. Diane's presentation. Also, please feel free to add questions in the chat, anything like that. I'll be monitoring that. So if anyone wants to ask anything, I'll be right there. And it's 11 right now, and this is recorded, so I'm going to start right now. And if anyone misses the beginning or would like to see something that they've missed, these are recorded and are uploaded to our YouTube page and our website, so don't worry about that. Miss Diane, are you ready?
Yes.
All right, so I'm very happy to welcome Miss Diane Prieur. I'm so sorry I asked you how to pronounce it, and now I've forgotten how to pronounce it. But Ms. Diane is a lecturer at the University of Bahrain. She enjoys developing innovative lessons for technical writing, public speaking, and critical thinking to inspire future leaders. She's the coordinator of the Read to Lead Foundation, which provides adult literacy materials to communities in need. She's an avid lover of drama and the arts, and she has a passion to inspire students to develop their creative talents to bring literature and thought-provoking stories to life. When she isn't cooking or golfing, Diane can be found dragon boat racing at the Bahrain Bay. Fascinating. The floor is yours, Ms. Diane.
Thank you so much, Farah. I just want to thank you so much, and Dr. Saad, and all of TESOL Kuwait for this wonderful opportunity. Good morning to you all. I hope you're having a lovely Saturday morning and are excited to explore some inspiring readers with interactive activities. So let's jump in. First of all, just a little bit about differentiated instruction. Most of us know that differentiated instruction has an incredible potential because it unlocks for readers their background and their experience in their learning. And especially for those who lack motivation, it can give them a little push to begin to desire learning. And so if they have differentiated instruction, they have an opportunity to explore things that are of interest to them, and hopefully that will make them more engaged in the lessons. So we're going to look at 5 dimensions of differentiated instruction. Of course, the first one is creating the lessons. And as teachers, we can create lessons that are based on the what of the lesson, the content. We focus on the process of how to do the lesson. So we can differentiate what the lesson is in terms of the content. We can also differentiate the process or the how of the lesson. And then we can also differentiate what they produce, the result. And that's mostly what we're going to focus on today. We're mostly going to focus on different ways for learners to produce something after they've read or to analyze and engage while they're reading. And we can differentiate those activities based on their level, their interest, their background, their experience, and of course, for university level, their academic major. All of these things are based on the learner's interests. So as I said, their background, their experience, their academic focus, and then also their learner profile. So we're going to look today at a personality inventory. And a personality interest inventory allows you to get to know your students and to figure out what those background experiences are so that you can develop QR code activities to engage them in learning. The differentiated instruction allows us to create different paths so that we can have different learning paths for the diversity of our students. And so this will help us to hopefully improve learning outcomes, to increase engagement, to inspire a love of learning, to increase self-awareness, and to help students learn more efficiently and with deeper understanding. And that is a huge focus, helping students to understand what they've read and helping them to remember it and to be able to recall it so that they can show what they know or show what they've learned, either on an assessment or in some kind of project. Many students have a challenge remembering what they've read or applying what they've read. So comprehension is the first issue, but then after they have had some comprehension, some of them really struggle, especially those lower level learners, with producing something that shows that they've learned. And so differentiated instruction and some of these QR code activities can help them to be able to show in different ways what they've read and help them to apply it, to analyze it, to synthesize it, and to interact with others while they do that. So the student interest inventory, when I interviewed my students, I found that 92% of adult learners stated that they had never been asked what they preferred to read in a class throughout the course of their academic careers. So I wonder now, just in the chat, you can use your microphone, you can answer in the chat. I'm curious, how many of you have had the opportunity, someone has actually asked you in a class, what do you prefer to read? You've been given choice, you've been given preference either in what you read or what you produce to show that you've understood the reading. Have you had that kind of choice? Feel free to answer in the chat, or you can turn on your microphone and answer as well. Would you say you're part of that 92% of adult learners that has really never been given the opportunity to choose what you want to read in a course, or to choose how you produce, how you show understanding of what you've read through some kind of project?
Got answers in the chat. I'm saying for myself, choice is rare. Miss Dr. Saud is saying for writing, yes. For reading, not so much. Dayal Shatti is saying not really. Dean Evan is saying no choice.
Okay. Yes, I can see those responses. That's amazing. Yeah, so I would say we are a good representation of that 92% too. Yeah, in writing, we're often given some choices, either, especially on assessment, there may be a number of prompts. But in reading, it would be really difficult to let the students choose what they read. In these QR code activities, you can give them choice with the level of what they read. So they could be reading about the same topic, but they could read it at a different level, say an A1 level or a B1 level, based on the background and experience of the students and their CFR levels. You can also differentiate what they produce. And so that's mostly what we're going to focus on. And I hope to give you some really wonderful interactive activities that can allow them to show what they've understood from the reading and allow them to analyze and interact with others as they do that. So let's look at an overview of today's webinar. We're going to talk about opinions about reading. The interest inventory will allow you and allow the students that you may share this interest inventory with to give their opinions just about reading. How do they feel about their reading? How do they feel about reading in general? And then how do they feel about their ability to read? What are their preferences in reading? What's their personality style? And then we'll look at some QR code background and experience. Have they ever used a QR code for a reading activity or in any class? Have they ever used QR codes for activities? Also, we'll look at some e-group reading categories. These are categories that I've created in collaboration with my students, again, based on using this inventory, based on looking at their preferences, their background, their experience, their personality. We created these e-group reading categories, and different categories of readers can have, although they may be doing the same reading, can have different QR code activities to interact and to show what they've understood from the reading, to analyze the text. And then we'll look at some general QR code activities that you could use with any course and students of any age. So this is a workshop. So let's start off with an activity. Here is the QR code. And if you would like, you can scan that QR code and you can take the reading interest inventory. And let me try here I think I can share this in the chat for those of you who might want a preference for that. I'll just put this in the chat. and you could just click on the link. And that will take you to the form. And again, this form will have questions about you as a person, a little bit about your opinions about yourself as a reader, a little bit about your personality, and then some questions about how you like to analyze text, your preferences for activities based on whether
Miss
you write
Diane,
or read. Yes?
sorry, I just wanted to let you know that I've like needed to send a request to you to access the
Okay,
Google form. I don't know if it's just me.
problem. Let me see. Let me see. It should be open. It should be public. Let me go in and make sure it's
Yeah, a few other people are saying that it's the
okay.
same thing.
Give me 1 second. Let
Yeah,
me just make sure that's public.
awesome.
Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, it is public. Let me check here. Thanks for your patience. Um, are you able to access it now? Can you access it now?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks for your patience. Right, we have some responses coming in. And I will share my screen so you can see the responses to come in. Thank you for those of you who are completing that quite quickly. Wonderful. How did you feel about the ease of taking the survey? Do you think this is something your students would find difficult or challenging to do, or do you think it would be fairly quick for them to do it? Is this something you could see yourself using in your classroom? Looking at the data. Love your opinions just about the user friendliness of the survey. Hello, Mahmoud. Nice to see you from Iran. Easy to do in 5 minutes. Good, good, easy, straightforward, excellent. All right, so we have 11 responses. I know some of you may still be completing it, but let's take a look at some of the data that we're getting. So it looks like the majority of us are over 26. And yeah, this is the same experience I had when I did this research with my students. Pretty much 100% has said, no, I've never had the opportunity to share or participate in a reading interest inventory. And so this is really good and important data for us because you can see from the questions, you can tailor this to your class based on what you want to know about their learning, based on their, again, their preferences, their background, their personality. And so it was kind of shocking to me that students have never been asked about their preferences in reading. They've never been asked about their interest in how they like to categorize or analyze information, or how they learn best in terms of what they see or what they hear, if they're kinesthetic, they're audio learners. We tend to overlook some of those things, or we just may not have time in the curriculum. Sometimes we're so pressed for time, and yet these areas are so critical to their learning and to helping them think about that metacognition and recognize how they learn to learn, helping them to make those connections for themselves so that, especially when they're studying at home, they can choose different methods of analyzing text so that they can understand it, so that they can remember it. And so I'm hoping that a lot of these activities we look at today, again, some of them you may or may not have time to do in the classroom, depending on the structure of your curriculum, but there are things that you can teach students to do, or things that they can do on their own. And again, they can learn to analyze text or learn to categorize information from text in a way that makes sense to them. So there'll be a lot of interactive activities that you can use in the classroom, or you can teach students to use outside of the classroom. Have you ever used QR codes? Looks like a few people have, about 33%. But again, vast majority have not used QR codes. So as you can see from using the survey, the QR code is very easy to use. We do have to sometimes give access to the forms. So that was also easily resolved, thankfully. But this is something that, again, the QR codes could be information that they access about the background of the text, or it could be information that they access about the author, or about landmarks that might be extra information. And my students love those little QR codes because they can, if they're not in an assessment situation, they're reading on their own or they're reading in class, they can access those QR codes for extra information about the text, a famous person, a famous place, again, the background of the author, some of the themes of what they're reading, some of the statistics that they might be reading in the text, depending on whether it's narrative or expository. And again, those are not the activities, those are just actual things about the text, but they do like those QR codes. They like using their phones to access interesting information. And some of them have gotten in the habit to do that, when they're reading a text and they find something they don't know, to immediately just pop out, grab that piece, that data, that piece of information that helps fill in some gaps, and then come back to the text. Of course, if they're in an assessment situation or they're reading for under a specific time pressure, they don't have time to do that. But many times, especially when they're reading on their own, it piques their curiosity and it helps them to become motivated learners and get that intrinsic motivation to learn more, to seek more, to search things out. Now, we asked about movies in the text, or in this reading interest inventory, because many times the types of movies that we like to watch can key into the types of reading that we like to do. And so there are some people who really love documentaries, and those people also may love to read things like biographies, or things that are, again, expository text learning about how something works or the process of something. Whereas others may be more interested in adventure, or they may be more interested in travel or people. They might be more interested, those who are interested in drama and relationships, again, that might translate into the types of text they may be interested to read. And again, in the curriculum, we may not have time for that, but they do have time when they're at home. And so helping them to make the connection, even how they choose a movie, if they look at a poster of a movie and they look at the cover of a book, they can see generally by the lettering style, they can see by the font or the colors. Those who like action may tend to like bold fonts with reds and oranges, whereas those who maybe like they like things about nature, or they like to read things again about relationships. They might like softer fonts in blues and purples and greens, and different types of colors or images. And so helping them to think about book covers, to think about before they even pick up a book. So many students they don't get through the first few pages, and they don't know how to choose for themselves something that they would like or they would enjoy reading. And yet the movies they're watching were text first. Many of them were based on books, or it was a screenplay first. So when they're reading, they have to learn to get that movie going in their mind. And then they're the director. They get to create the characters. They get to create the costumes. They get to create the action scenes. And this is why so many times students will even admit they didn't like, if they've read a book and then watched a movie, they may not have liked the movie as much because they imagined it so differently in their minds. So this is, again, helping them make those connections between the types of things they like to watch and translating that into what things they might like to read so that they can be intrinsically motivated. It looks like here for our majority, most people like to watch movies, about 25% always, and about 45%. So everyone's in that category of always, usually, or sometimes. I rarely have a student who says that they never watch movies. What types of movies do you like to watch? Looks like we have a lot of drama, and we have a lot of adventure. We also have a lot of nature documentaries, very few action, and very little history. That's very interesting. I like to read, of course, with this group. That's generally with the students. That's not there's a little more red in that chart. And I like to read because this is really interesting to find out what motivates students to read. So for most of us, we want to learn new information. That was true of me also. And then want to improve vocabulary or want to relax. Again, most of the students will click blue, I want to pass a class. But you do find some that will say, I want to learn new information or I want to relax. And then, of course, we usually have a number of students who don't like to read at all. They just admit that reading is not their cup of tea, and it's very challenging for them. I learn best by, wow, this is interesting, participating. A lot of kinesthetic learners here with us today, and then what I see. I would say I have a higher number. I don't know about your classrooms, but especially here in the Middle East, I have a higher number that tend to learn by what they hear. They're audio learners, but since the majority of teachers learn by what they see or learn by what they participate and do, a lot of the text or the activities that they get in class are based on what they see. So they get a lot of visual and, of course, all of the assessments. So it's interesting, we have 91% that what I participate and do, that gives me high hopes that you'll be able to use some of these QR code activities and students will be able to interact and learn the same way. Because there is, especially in higher education, tends to be a much higher percentage based on what they see rather than what they hear or what they do or what they actually participate in, especially with reading. How do you feel about your skills as a reader? Good, excellent to good. There are a few that are not very good. And then, of course, with our students, we will have some purple. And that's just good to know about their perception. It's always interesting to me when I have A and B students who tell me that they're not good readers. And so again, some of this is how they feel about their skills. It may or may not be realistic. There are others who really are very poor readers, but they think they're great readers, and therein lies the rub. We have some that are great readers and they don't really know it. And then we have some that think they're good readers, and so they're not doing the things necessary to help them become good readers. Again, getting that movie going in their mind, visualizing, perhaps taking notes, making connections, making predictions. They don't even think to do those things, which again, they naturally do when they're watching movies. They make predictions in their minds. They imagine things in their head that might be different from what's on the screen. So again, teaching them to do that while they read is a powerful tool. And some of our students think that they're great readers and actually may not be the best readers. I like to read about the following topics. Now, when we get into the topics, I'm going to go through this rather quickly. We're going to see, this is where we start to get into the e-reading categories. So we've created 5 e-reading categories for these questions based on whether you chose 1, which is blue, 2, which is red, 3, which is yellow, 4, which is green, or 5, which is purple. This is going to help us categorize what type of reader you are in those E categories. We've created 5 E categories. So I've created those in collaboration, like I said, with lots of students. So here we have a lot of purple. Here we have a lot of blue. A lot of blue. Preferring to read, that's a separate category. Analyzing what we read, once again, a lot of blue and purple, but there's more red here. A little bit more green and yellow. When we're reading, we prefer, again, this is a very blue. And then this one's interesting, personality type, analytical and thought. We have a lot more yellow. So not so much red. So while our higher categories tended to be blue, purple, and a little bit of red, it's interesting personality style. Many of you chose yellow. So again, we'll look at this, and now let's jump back to, let me jump back to our PowerPoint. And we're going to look at how we use this data now that we've taken a look at the data. How do we use this data for our students? Start from the current slide and move on. Can you see my screen? Everyone can see my screen? One moment. Yes. All right. So the interactive data with the activities, again, this is going to help us take a look at those 5 e-reading group categories. So number 1, they're blue. We're going to call our number 1s explorers. And sometimes I use a color. I just tell them their color, or sometimes I use the numbers. All the number 1s, here's an activity for you. All the number 3s, here's an activity for you. And so when I give the students a reading activity, there will be QR codes at the bottom. And I also use these symbols, so they come to know their symbol. So there are things placed either around the room or actually on the activity, and they can either choose by color. They can choose, for example, I have a reading library. It's very small in my office, and students can come and choose by color based on the e-group categories for the explorers or the others. And they also can choose by symbol, or they can choose by color. So color, number, and symbol. And number 2, these are going to be our experts. Number 3, these are our examiners. Number 4, these are engagers. And number 5, these are evaluators. Now, the reading interest inventory, of course, it's only just a small number of questions, but it gives an idea. As we go through these different categories and we look at the background and experience of each category, you may find that on the reading interest inventory, you were an expert. But in actual reality, when you look at your personality and the types of activities, you might find you're an engager. And sometimes we're more than one. We have more than one interest. For one reading activity, we might be interested to do the activity for the explorer, and another activity we might be interested to do the evaluator. So students, they're not locked in to these categories in any way or shape. You just are offering them to them as a way to, again, interact with the text, analyze the text, and produce something to show their understanding of the text. And they can do that in different ways. So let's look at our explorers in general. Again, these are generalizations, not at all meant to be stereotypes, and they're fluid. Some students will have a little of one thing and a little of another, but they can see what are their basic preferences. Our explorers tend to love adventure. They enjoy learning new information. They appreciate information about countries and customs and cultures generally. They often like change, and they like interesting activities that are thought-provoking. They tend to be extroverts. They're generally competitive and enjoy a challenge. They often have lots of dreams and ideas and are usually able to grasp the big picture pretty quickly to get the gist. Those are explorers. And so activities for the explorers, if this narrative text, we may want to do a postcard activity where they're explaining the perspective of a main character by creating a postcard. Another activity could be creating a graphic cartoon, using their creativity to show the text through the narrative of the text or the scene of something, or if it's a short story, showing that through Powtoon or Animaker. Another thing would be to do an activity called Picture Picture, and this is where they grab main ideas, but they put them in a collage. And so they show that through picture form. Through expository text, our explorers tend to prefer sequence text structures where they can put things in a logical sequence. A trivia game might be an interesting activity for them. And they either can do the trivia game based on their reading and what they remember, or they could create one and then the rest of the class can do it. So again, it's the creation of that, gathering the facts and main ideas where they can really produce and show what they've learned and understood from the reading. Another thing would be a hexagon chart. We'll look at one of these a little bit later, where they can categorize ideas based on the areas that are touching in the chart of different hexagons. Our experts. This is our number 2 red category. They tend to love power. They usually enjoy debate. They often appreciate the satisfaction of doing a task with excellence. They tend to like leadership and the opportunity to make a difference. They are also usually extroverts. They tend to thrive under pressure and tend to enjoy timed activities. They often have lots of goals and they do tend to prefer order and categorizing information. These are no-nonsense learners. With narrative text, we might have them create a new ending, maybe a more satisfying ending than the one that they experienced. Having them do a 4 corners debate, which is where you have 4 different ideas. They have to fully agree or partially agree or disagree, and they can debate. They can persuade, they can defend their ideas in collaboration with others. Another idea is for them to do a web quest where they're searching for facts. And again, like the trivia game for the explorers, this is where they could participate in a web quest. So you can have them do a reading and then they do a web quest to find factual information or the source of that factual information, or they can actually create the web quest for other students to do after they've done the reading. For expository text, our experts really like comparison contrast text structures. That hexagon chart is also useful for them. We'll look at one a little bit later on, but it's factual data information. And again, a web quest with facts or statistics is a great idea for our expository, especially if it's timed. They love the challenge of finding those facts as quickly as possible. A little bit of competition and again, a little bit of time pressure makes them interested and engaged. Our examiners. Examiners are number 3, they're yellow, and they love facts and statistics. They tend to enjoy making lists, also gathering data. They appreciate information that involves a process. These are our more scientific thinkers. They like detailed-oriented activities that make them ponder information or draw connections. They tend to be introverts. They generally dislike timed activities and pressure, and this is the difficulty with doing an activity with the whole class, is some really thrive on that competition or the time pressure and others just wither under it. So this is why a differentiated activity can be an amazing thing, because you can have some students who are again thriving under those activities where they have some pressure, and then you have others who they don't have to worry about the time. They're making connections, they're analyzing, and they don't have to feel that time pressure. There's no competition. They often need time to prepare a verbal response. So again, if they were doing those 4 corners debate, I would give my examiners an extra day to think about it, because they might not be able to come up with those fast action responses. And again, this would put them at a great disadvantage in a verbal exchange against an explorer or an expert. They tend to be perfectionists as well. So it's giving them as much time as possible is not such a great idea, but again, you don't want to make that a pressured activity. Our examiners for narrative text, they might enjoy Mapmaker, which is where they can create a scene, or they can do the background of setting for a novel or for a story. They could do a quote list, which again allows them to highlight the background and the ideas of the characters. Quote list from the text. And then an object matchup, which is where, again, you would give them objects. They have to match which character or event in the plot that aligns with, or this is something they could create for others to do. I usually have them, again, I'll have the explorers and the experts create those, the web quest, the trivia game, the object matchup, and then I post those on a gallery wall. And again, students can wander from place to place participating in those activities as a big end of a project idea when we're finishing a novel or finishing a short story unit or something like that. Cause and effect text structures are the preference for examiners. They do tend to like categorizing facts or main ideas with action verbs. And adjust the facts trivia game, again, keeping that scientific data percentages or the year something happened or how many people were involved, giving them factual data. Our engagers are green. This is number 4, and they love discussion in general. They enjoy interacting with others. They often appreciate information about human interest and relationships. They tend to like exploring ideas with others and collaborative learning. They are usually extroverts as well, and they're often excellent networkers. They tend to prefer verbal communication, and they do tend to be audio learners. And they are usually very well able to work in a group of people with different levels of learning. For our engagers and narrative text, they might prefer a character chart. This is where they would create an adjective chart based on the background of that character and what they experienced in the text. A panel discussion where they can discuss themes or character motivation or plot elements. And maybe even a mock trial. We're going to look at the blame game chart later. My students love the blame game chart. It allows them to assign blame for some event, usually tragic, that has happened in a story or a play or a novel. And they love analyzing and, again, persuading or defending their choices based on the percentages that they assign to each character. Expository texts, they tend to prefer description. Jigsaw sharing is great for the engagers because each person has an important key part that the others don't have. So their part's very meaningful when they share it, but at the same time, it pulls together something that as they each share, they get a very whole perspective. And then, of course, the KWL chart, we'll look at one of those in a little bit, analyzing what they know, what they want to know, and what they learned. And last but not least, number 5 are evaluators. They're purple. And the evaluators tend to love exploring emotions. They enjoy learning about feelings and the inner self. They appreciate information about ideas and motivations, and they like exploring personal connections and deep ideas. They tend to be introverts. They generally are very relaxed and soft-spoken. They tend to express themselves in creative ways, and they often appreciate sensory activities. So as you look back on your reading interest inventory, in our personality question at the very end, many of you said you were yellow, and that those would fit in with the examiners. And so those of you who are looked at that, again, we tend to, in the questions for the activities, there was a lot of blue, a lot of you were explorers, or we had a high number of purple evaluators. Now that we've done that, do you see yourself fitting into some of these categories? Oh, let me just finish for the evaluators. I apologize. Let me just jump into this first. For the narrative text, the monologue, the feelings of a main character, they can explore that by giving a monologue. They could do a fishbowl activity. Now that the evaluators might not want to be the person in the center, that might be a good role for an explorer or for a an expert who tend to be more extroverted, but they would love to be the person in the outside of the fishbowl who's interacting with that person and asking them questions or feeding off of the things that they're saying. A perspective shift. This is where you change the perspective. You may be familiar with the fractured fairy tales, but this is something like where, in the case of the Princess and the Pea, you might write the story from the perspective of the pea. Or in the case of the three wolves, you write the perspective from the villain or the bad wolf. So these are shifting the perspective of a story and giving a different character's viewpoint, especially if it's an inanimate object, is something that the evaluators really love to do and explore, again, those feelings and thoughts and ideas and connections from the text. For expository reading, they prefer problem solution text structures. That was then, this is now, where they can analyze the facts as they were from the beginning and where they are now once the text is finished. What has changed, again, about their understanding of the facts. And then finally, a journal reflection where, again, they can reflect and share ideas. So these are, once again, we've got 3 categories that tend to be extroverts: explorers, experts, engagers. And then we've got our examiners and our evaluators. So yes, many of us were yellow in that group that you took, engagers. So do you see yourself in that engager category, or do you, again, we had a lot of, with the activities, a lot of blue and purple. So did you feel like the interest inventory nailed it, that it gave you some good perspective of activities that might be interesting to you? Or are you feeling, no, I'm actually green, or I'm actually a different category that came out on the chart? Be interesting, your feedback on that. What do you think? Did it line up? Can you see yourself being interested in participating in some of these activities? Well, let's look at some specific examples. We've talked in general. This is that hexagon chart I was talking about. And so you can take a look at, you can scan the QR code if you'd like. And I can also place, let me escape and place this in the text for you. Sure. Give me just one second. Here it is. So I'm going to share this link for you in the chat so that if you'd like to look up, this is an expository text about a dowboat. Very famous in Bahrain. I'm sure you can see in the background of my World Trade Center. When I show Bahrain with the World Trade Center, before I was sharing my screen, that's of course one of our iconic buildings, and it has a dowboat design, so the parametric structure for engineering. So let me put this in the chat. Thanks for your patience while I flip screens. Okay, so if you can't use the QR code, here it is in the chat. And you can take a look at that dowboat activity. And you can see how if they're looking at that reading activity as they read, they can be making connections from the text. And of course, anything here that's touching would have a connection. So of course, this one in the center here, this limey green one, would have a connection with 4 or 5 other pieces of data or information. So again, as they're filling out information on the chart, they're also categorizing, analyzing connections. So this is one that is completed by a student. And so they were making connections between dowboats and how they're famous in Arabic literature and architecture through Ibn Battuta, through buildings, like I said, and the architectural design in Qatar, in UAE, and in Bahrain. We have those dowboat structures and architecture. This is called parametric design. So it's something I did with my engineers, English for engineering. And they loved this activity because they were able to look at the Dow boat and those parametric structures. And then looking at the largest Dow boat. And then again, making connections between when it was created.
Hi, Miss Diane.
Yes.
Sorry, but the link is not working. It says not found.
Okay.
It's a broken link.
Okay.
Thank you.
Will the QR code work for you?
Let's check. Just give me a minute.
Okay. See if you can get that QR code to work.
Hello, I actually used the QR code, but it has some kind of newspaper, I mean, it's not something like you just showed us. So I don't know if it's correct or not.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull it. Let me stop sharing for just 1 minute. I'll see if I can pull it up for you so you can see the text. Thanks for letting me know. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute. And let me go to see if I can pull it up for you. Okay, so I think, yes, I think there's an I that got cut off the link. So if you just add I to the link, it will come up for you. And even the QR code is coming up. Okay, so let me reshare my screen. Thanks for your patience. Let's see if you can see this. So this is the text. Okay, trying to get to where we can share the screen. Did I lose you? Did I lose you guys? Okay, there we are. Thanks for your patience with screen sharing. All right. Yes, if you just add an I on the end of that link, for some reason that was cut off. I do apologize for that. And now, I hope you can see it now. Thanks for your patience. So this was how the world's largest Dow boat was built in Dubai. It's got text and it's got images. Can you all access that? And it's got some other links to different videos. So again, it's from the Collegiate Times. And this was let me go back to the PowerPoint. This was an activity that the examiners did. And it was a KWL. So you can see how they're analyzing the same text, but they're producing different information. And so our nonfiction text structures, description, order and sequence, cause and effect, comparison, contrast, problem solution. Again, different groups of learners will be interested in those to a higher extent often. And so these are different activities that I've done with those different E-group categories. So again, the engagers working on using these types of graphic organizers, different signal words, the explorers, again, using a type of graphic organizer that involves sequence, so sequencing ideas, Again, using the same reading, but it's a different QR code activity, a different graphic organizer that they complete, or looking for different signal words to help them interact with the text to either compare and contrast or to show process. Our experts, again, using comparison contrast. And then the examiners, cause and effect activities, and our evaluators, problem and solution. So like that fishbone activity here in the middle. Okay. Now here's another one. Let's hope this link works. I will share the link with you in the chat. You can try the QR code. I hope this link works well this time. Let's see if you can try that. This should pop up on the ruins of Pompeii, the archaeological miracle. You can reject the cookies as you see fit. Share the screen for this for you. So this is on the archaeological ruins of Pompeii. So once again, there's some more textual information. It's got some maps. It's got some pictures of the archaeology. This one is very factual. So again, hopefully the pictures help them to understand the text, and there are things that they can discuss about, and then different QR code activities, again, where they're interacting with the text to show what they've understood or to analyze. So based on that, they could do a cause and effect. And this is where they were categorizing using those signal words, such as resulting, and looking at different signal words due to, since, and analyzing the causes and effect by working with those signal words. This was a great activity for the examiners. This was an activity for the explorers with sequence. So again, analyzing the same data, looking at some of the same factual information, but they're recognizing the sequence. And so again, those signal words for centuries after, at the time, today, later, while. So again, teaching them to look for signal words in text, but categorizing the information differently. For our engagers, they did a web, and they were able to look at connections about what happened, who happened, who was involved when it happened, where did it happen, why did it happen. So again, they're using that graphic organizer, again, looking at the signal words, looking at the text, trying to understand what they've read and to apply what they've read and analyze it. And of course, all the groups, having them be involved in text-to-text connections, text-to-self connections, text-to-world connections. This is another activity for the evaluators, text-to-self connections. We looked at Act 2 of Romeo and Juliet, taking a look at conflict and conflict resolution, specifically between Tybalt and Romeo in Act 2, and the students making those text-to-self connections I've begun to realize.
Miss Diane, we're still on the page. That's the Pompeii page. I think you need to switch back to the PowerPoint.
Thank you. I'm sorry that you haven't been seeing them. There we go. Let's try. Okay, you can see it now. I apologize for these technical glitches. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. So let me go back a little bit. I'll start again. Just flipping. This was the cause and effect. And I can happily share this PowerPoint with you. So you can look at different things. This is the sequence order. Again, looking at some of those signal words, looking at the web, the who, what, when, where, and why. And then those text to self, text to text, and text to world connection. This is a screen I was on where the student was saying, I'm going to realize conflict is not always avoidable. When people express anger, the emotion they may be really feeling is fear. So this student began to realize often to diffuse anger, if I ask a question about what fear might be being faced, it might diffuse the conflict. This was the chart of blame activity that I talked about earlier, where from Romeo and Juliet, the deaths of Romeo and Juliet, students had to choose who they blame. And so there was great discussion based on this, great use of quotes from the text, facts from the text, and getting into how, who would be to blame and why, and again, at what percentage. They could look at, these are activities. So after finishing a reading, whether it's expository or whether it's narrative, some of these are for narrative, they produce something. So this is where we talked about they can have different QR code activities where they're producing or they're illustrating or they're designing, again, based on their interests, based on their academic background. And just to recap, time is winding down. Just to recap, some activities for the explorers, like a scavenger hunt, a parody, for the experts, a mock trial, for the examiners, text-to-text connections or a list of facts, for the engagers, a graffiti wall, or a character motive analysis, and then who's to blame, or a journal reflection. So what questions do you have for me? Comments? Things that you may be able to make connections with?
Thank you so much, Miss Diane. I just want to thank you. This is extremely interesting. I really like how so much is catered to every different learner. And I think because we started talking about reading, my mind immediately went to narrative reading, and to see all of the different activities applied to expository text, not only narrative text, has really broadened my personal kind of way of thinking about just readings in general.
That's very insightful. I'm so glad. Anyone else can see, how could you use this in the classroom? How could you use this with your students? Anyone have any ideas they'd like to share?
I could share from my own experience because I use the National Geographic texts, and every single text has every single unit comes with an article that is related to like the topic that we're talking about in this unit. And so I really love the idea of a mock trial because we do something like disadvantages, advantages essays. So if we can do something where like I ask you to perform the advantages, disadvantages by putting the topic to trial, that's just like a fascinating way of thinking about how to rethink advantages, disadvantages, pros and cons.
That would be great.
Yeah.
The graphic
We can,
organizers are helpful too.
sorry?
Graphic organizers are always helpful because they can
Absolutely.
categorize information based on their interests.
Perfect. And if we, yeah, like you mentioned, if we could have a copy of the PowerPoint, in case anyone wants to review it later on, that would be great.
Sure. Absolutely.
I have just another comment to make, which is that, let me just pull up. Once again, I'm going to post the link to the certificates. There's the 10 KD link for the certificate, as well as being a member of TESOL, which is 25 KD. To be a member of TESOL, you are a member for the next 365 days, which means that you get opportunities for professional development sessions like this one, and you get your certificates for free through the TESOL membership. It runs for a full year. It automatically renews, and we will send an email before it automatically renews, just in case you want to cancel. Um, you get all certificates of attendance. You get kind of told about these events, and you get discounted fees to attend the conference that is created by TESOL Kuwait, as well as a discounted price when purchasing books from some of our partners and vendors. So that is some of the pros of being a TESOL Kuwait member. And then you get to attend more amazing events like the one that Ms. Diane just held for us. Again, lovely work. Thank you so much, Ms. Diane, and thank you for taking the time to do this and for attendees as well.
It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for the interaction. Thank you for your patience with some of the shifting of screens. And I hope you found something useful that will benefit your students.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they all did. Thank you all so much. Have a good day.
I'm sorry, before we finish, can I just say something?
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm from Turkey, and that was really useful for me. I would love to ask, well, you said in the beginning that this will be on YouTube. Can I just have the name of the channel? Because I am actually new to here. I mean,
Yeah,
how can
I
I
don't
find
post
you
it
on
on
YouTube?
YouTube, but I can share with you the PowerPoint.
Oh,
You're welcome
okay.
to
Yeah,
email
that would
me.
be great.
Yeah, I'll put my
I
email
think
in the chat.
the YouTube link will be posted from the TESOL Kuwait channel
Okay,
on
okay,
YouTube.
yes.
Oh,
So if you
yeah,
just
yeah,
search
thank you.
TESOL Kuwait, then you will definitely find it, and you will find other sessions just like it that we did in the previous years.
Thank you so much. That was actually what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for jumping in with that essential information.
Thank
Dan,
you.
thank you so much for the session. I really enjoyed it. I just have one question.
Mhm.
Did you where did you get this? Like, how did you get inspired from doing this? Was it like from reading a research, or was it like hearing someone else speak about it in like a conference or a session?
Yeah, so this comes out of 30 years of experience. I've been exploring the ideas of reading interest inventories, and yeah, just came to realize that there are different types of learners and interested in, and I love personality inventories. So I would say looking at personality inventories that there are introverts, there are extroverts, sanguine, choleric, but I had never seen anything that kind of connected that to the type of learner. So that was my own, yeah, idea with that.
Dan, I highly recommend you like write this and maybe perhaps even publish it, because I feel like a lot of people can actually like benefit from having this, not just like as a way of teaching, but also like as a reference. So does this work? You know, we've conducted a survey and we found out that, you know, this kind of this kind of works. So yeah, I highly recommend you doing that.
Thank you, thank you. I did publish a research with the TESOL Kuwait 2024 conference. That's where some of this was presented originally. So the webinar is an offshoot of that.
Thank you all so much. Yes, to Miss Zainab, the recording will be on the TESOL Kuwait. If you just Google on YouTube TESOL Kuwait, TESOL Kuwait, you are going to find previous webinars, and this one hopefully will be on there soon. And I do apologize, for some reason our links are down. I already have everyone's email because you registered for this event. I should already have everyone's email. I'll send an email to you guys thanking you for attending and sending new links if anyone would like to get today's certificate or register to be a member of TESOL Kuwait, which again, if you register for 25 KD per year, you attend all of our, you get certificates for all of our webinars for free, all of our Saturday webinars for free, and, you know, discounted codes and things like that. Thank you so much, Ms. Diane. If there are no more questions, we're going to end it right here today. Any final last words? Anything like that? We'll be sending an
Well,
email.
thank
Yes,
you thank you for organizing this, and thank you, Dan,
absolutely.
for coming. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you to TESOL
Lovely.
Kuwait, and thank you to all of you for spending your Saturday morning together. It's
Wonderful.
great to be in the business of teaching.
Absolutely. Always, always a great day.
The best
Have a great
profession.
day, everyone. Yay.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.